Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host Alex Sashlow. This week, another Democratic overperformance, this time in Michigan. And what on earth is the Trump regime attempting to do with the economy?
I don't think they're
Uh,
trying very hard.
yeah, they're not. Well, they are, but it's not working, and it's going in the wrong direction. Plus, new data on just who Trump is losing from his old coalition. And more questions from you, like, has the 2028 Democratic field gotten any clearer? Spoiler alert, no.
No,
And please stop emailing us about your favorite political movies. I get it. Alex, you win this round.
I made him say that.
Yeah. Well, he writes this whole intro for so that just like Alex, we're since you've listed all the things you want to talk about today. Where do you want to get
Oh,
started, my friend?
oh man. Okay, well, one more special, and you don't even need to hear us talk about it or look it up. You know probably that a Democrat won and or at the very least overperformed this week in Michigan. Chedrick Green did both. This was a question from Steve in Pennsylvania who was paying attention, and a lot of these we're getting caught up on a lot of listener questions. I still feel bad we went through like a month of guests and didn't get any feedback. You've seen enough cycles, Joe, to know when people are overreading the tea leaves. Democrats have been overperforming in special elections, and the Michigan special election was watched as a midterm indicator. Do you see that as real Democratic energy, anti-Trump backlash, or something campaigns can actually organize into lasting power? Ooh, that's a good one.
Organize, well, you'd have to organize it into lasting power because it's frankly, yes, there's a lot of real Democratic energy out there, but it's probably anti-Trump in a lot of places than it necessarily is, particularly with a lot of independents and some of the soft Republicans that have been voting in these special elections for Democrats. There's still a lot of people that are we need to work to get. But the energy is clearly on two fronts. Democratic energy is way up. Even MAGA is starting to lack some energy in terms of their staying power. And then on top of that, you do have a real schism with independents that have whether they're not ready to embrace Democrats for the long haul. But as we've also talked about double haters, those two groups are moving hard to vote for Democrats against MAGA and Trump in significant numbers. But the question is, that's still a problem we have to solve later on in 2028.
I mean, you look at that district, by the way, in Saginaw, Bay Harbor area. It's kind of just right in the center of the state, really. Kamala Harris barely won it. I mean, it was
Yeah,
literally like
by
a
one
point.
point, I think.
And so the one question I had is, okay, so Cheddar Green won by basically 20. So yeah, he's overperformed, quote unquote, overperforming. Is that also, it's probably a little that Kamala wasn't super popular at the, end of 2024, maybe a little bit of that, but I do sometimes wonder if we're pegging too much to Kamala Trump in 2024 when it really the story is just the bottom falling out on Trump. Pre-show, Joe, we were talking about. I pasted in our rundown that again I do control. So sorry about that, guys. But uh, a bunch of poll numbers, and there were a couple interesting ones this week. A ton of new data is coming back in the last. This is all from the last week. Exactly the point I think you were trying to get to, Joe. Number one, so far this year, 61% of Democrats versus only 53% of Republicans say they are very enthusiastic to vote. That's from WKSG. But like in a low turnout race, in a special election, in a any kind of special and any kind of off year, and yes, even in a midterm, that kind of gap matters a ton.
Yeah, but the reality is that these are specials, and so you got to ask yourself, well, how will that? I mean, because they're even lower turnout than midterms, right? In a lot of these places, but uh, the thing that remains the same so far across the board, and we've actually the difference is these, for instance, Virginia and New Jersey were not special elections. They were real all out, the midterm for those two states for governor. Um, and we saw the same thing. We saw the big moves of independents, big energy with Democrats, less energy with Republicans. And some of the other polling numbers that you're looking at, Alex, where 77% of MAGA Republicans are certain they're going to vote in the general election, but only 59% of non-MAGA Republicans are. Those are the ones that are going to stay home, and we're seeing this. And then there are, with among Democrats, 79%, are sure they're going to vote, certain. And when you actually look at even these sort of generic numbers, where you on the forced in the Washington Post, in a forced congressional choice vote, Democrats have a 5-point advantage. But when you look at the people who are certain to vote,
Yeah.
that goes up to a 9-point advantage. Now, the difference is at 5, we're already taking a majority of the House. And at 9, that goes up
It's like
substantially.
a 40 seat
So
wave. Yeah.
those are the things that we don't know yet. Although clear, it is a clear signal about why Democrats are overperforming. There is clearly less energy among non-MAGA Republicans, far more energy among Democrats, and far more
Even more than MAGA. Yeah.
far more Democrats than the pure MAGA base of their party. That's shrinking in size, by the way. The number of non-MAGA Republicans self-describing themselves who aren't sure they're going to vote, but it's going up, is another clear signal. But I still think the most important signal that we've seen all year is independence, where Trump approval now is only 25% among independents. It's a new low, and a new low of 56% approval among Republican leaning independents. By the way, the Republican leaning independents voted for Trump 91%. So you're talking about a new low of 56% approval among them. That starts to show you those are people who are soft GOP. Lots of them, Alex and I have seen in focus groups going back to 2017, where you had these Republican-leaning women and independents still voting Republican because the Democratic brand was something they just could not stomach, were never going to vote for. So we don't know. Lots of independents have voted and are saying they're going to vote for Democrats against Trump and MAGA in this election. I think the jury's still out on how many of these Republicans, non-MAGA Republicans, choose option under door number 3 of not voting. That's clearly been some of why we've been overperforming as well. How pronounced that gets actually may decide how big the seat numbers we win will be.
This is where one of the questions, really, since he came down the elevator, was this idea of this
Escalator.
kind of escalator. Yeah, you're right. Geez, it'd probably be an elevator now for what it's worth. But one of the questions has always been, you've got these kind of independent-ish voters. Some are double haters for a variety of reasons, but they keep coming back to this, like, I always thought it was like but he can get a good deal for us kind of person who uses like these little shorthand, like mostly doesn't really care necessarily about the social stuff, but ultimately probably swayed on the economy. It seems like in the last 10 years, that has been one of the hardest nuts to crack for Democrats. And it feels like this year that has been, and look, it doesn't feel like this is what all the data and all the election results are telling us. That nut has been like, or that door has been blown wide open.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, going into 2016, you got to remember that was 8 years of Obama. It was, started out with you get the handoff from you get the handoff from in 2008 from Bush, if you remember, going into the Great Recession. And so after 8 years of digging out of it and people complaining it's taking too long to get out of this recession, and the economy was really starting to move in a lot of ways, Trump inherited that. And that, I think, was the economy that people remembered in 2024. I mean, the Trump, the guy that could do the
Yeah. Yeah.
deal
Yeah.
that helped us, which was bull, because the deals had already been done. I mean, all the moving on the economy, the stuff that you needed to do, the Obama, and paid a price for it, for some of it, was the Obama administration. So that vague memory of him being able, which worked for him in 2024, given where the economy had gone with Biden. Jobs were great, numbers were up, but people were still struggling because
Right.
of COVID. What that does now is that memory of 2016, 2017, 18 is a long way gone. Wasn't really anything but Trump inheriting it. And now look at the deals, folks. Now they got real deals to look at. Tariffs, going after Iran, um, gas prices, all of it. And he is, as you asked early on, what are they trying to do with the economy? I mean, crash it. Well, I mean, actually, what they're doing is, we talk about the K shaped economy. Their grift and corruption is fueling the top of the K actually going for it. Why not? We'll make, tax cuts, all that stuff. We're making tons of money. It's the bottom half. And by the way, a lot of these are Trump's voters, people making under 50,000 a year, people who are not college educated, who are struggling on these gas prices. Republicans who are not MAGA aligned are looking at this, and that's what's going on. They've lost the plot on the economy big time. And everything he's done, including the ICE stuff, and going after landscapers and people pick our crops, has done nothing but drive prices up, make hiring more expensive, et cetera. So no, I don't think there's any way, and we've talked about this, there's no signs that any of that's going to change. The question is, that pull all the stuff that we've talked about, the independents moving, Republicans, non-MAGA Republicans actually starting to think about, again, you were there when we saw them in focus groups talking about that they'd love to leave, but gosh, not for the Democrats. It is an opportunity for the Democratic Party to reach out and actually come up with policies that broaden the big tent, and realign all this. And that is totally possible, but that'll happen in the presidential race in 2028. We've got a hell of a lot of great candidates out there that get this. Rob Sand in Iowa, Jolly in Florida, that are where Tellerico. You're seeing a different, new faces, I think, that are out there trying to present a bigger tent party that can appeal to these people. And I think that's really important for a lot of progressives and people out there, like, when we win, gosh, we're finally going to get our way. I think it's going to be very important on how we handle that, because we really can pull these people over, but it's not going to be by seeking revenge immediately and all those, although we have to have oversight, all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I think that there's a real moment here where the door is wide open for once, to look at the alternative. And if we take the House back, and the first 4, 5, 6 things we do are about helping the American people and addressing their issues, while oversight and other things are
Mhm.
we can chew gum and walk at the same time.
Well,
But that has to be first, I think.
I want to go back to your K-shaped economy point. So I think I saw that the Trump cabinet is worth like $700 billion, including Trump. And then you get an economic advisor. And this was, by the way, this was the question that the economic question was from Sarah in Missouri. So thank you for sending that in. But I think Justin Amash the other day said, it's like this administration is now just trolling MAGA.
Yeah.
And so Kevin Hassett, who's a White House economic advisor, I'm sure he's making a shitload of money too. He said, I had the head of one of the big five banks in my office yesterday going through the credit card data. And just as Scott Bessent said, credit card spending is through the roof. They're spending more on gasoline, but they're spending more on everything else too. This was what Sarah flagged the quote to us, but like you've got a gajillionaire and a head of a bank sitting there crowing about the fact that Americans are putting more money than ever on credit cards,
With
including
those
on
high
gas, which
interest
is through the
rates.
roof with high
Yeah.
interest rates. And they're going, this was on Fox. This was on like TV, them like proudly saying, "Hey, the economy's going great. People are spending a bunch of money on credit card." Like I think that was the disconnect she was pointing out, but kind of gets to it like they have no idea. They do
No.
not see that the cliff coming. This is actually kind of terrifying that they think that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, well, hey, if we can get, people borrow more, this is one of the things you and I were talking about in the very beginning of the administration. Start saving money, start putting it away, get ready, because there's going to be a lot of hardship with economically. And guess what? It is. I know the people who didn't, and so if you weren't saving money, and thought everything was normal and it was all going to play out okay. We just have to live through 4 years of this asshole. You ended up not having, um, guess what you're doing now to live? You're borrowing. You're using your credit cards. The question is, who lasts longer, this administration or your bank account? Because they're doing everything they can to wreck it, and they really don't give a damn. And so,
Right.
one of the things I wanted to get to, because you talked about this, who are the people that Trump is losing? Um, you know, 20% of his voters say they regret voting for him. Now, this question is, will those this is my point. They regret voting for him. Will they vote for Democrats? Not
Yep.
likely. Will they stay
Uh,
home? This is the weird kind of cross currents that are out there. But look, however bad things are economically for people today, um, it's clear that they're going to get worse every month now, going through November. Gas prices, if you can't afford, what is it, 458 today? Look, will they be at 4 or 398 by November? Possibly, I guess, but they're just as likely, if not likelier, to be at 5 or over $5. And like I said, if you're already living on credit cards to pay for your gas now, is your credit card going to last till November? This is what I mean
right.
about how it's almost like, is who's going to outlast who, and they're sort of oblivious to the whole thing. The real interesting thing about Trump regretters, and we are seeing this in places where we've been working, um, they're younger. The majority of them are under the age of 45, and a quarter are under the age of 30. Majority means over 50% of the regretters are under the age of 45. So you're getting, I think those are younger family, people who can't buy a home. It's also probably why a lot of people are staying in whatever job they have, because they're worried about, making
Yeah.
everything meet. But
That's like
yeah,
us,
yeah.
podcasters.
And the majority of regretters say the economy is either poor or not so good. And that's 64%, compared to only 35% of them who rate the economy positively. I want to know I want to meet the Trump
35.
regretters,
Yeah.
the 35 who
Yeah.
rate the economy positive.
Yeah. Well,
I
actually,
guess
that
they're
tells me that tells
regretting.
me that that 35 or that's it actually that's kind of shorthand for who's going to stick with him. You
Yeah,
mentioned that 64 or that 65 number, and some of what I think is helpful when look, I know every time there's a breathless headline about a poll, you see one number, okay, fine. But I put like a whole bunch of them in this document, and every once in a while you start seeing the same couple of numbers or the same couple of percentages across different polls. So you talk about, okay, 64% of Trump regretters think the economy is not good. You look at overall, that's something like 63, 64%. But the one that I came back to is 80 in the new Marist poll, 81% of Americans say gas prices are straining their household budget. 63% of Americans blame Trump for increased gas prices. So I think a lot of those numbers start fitting together in a way that shows exactly what's really going on
yeah, no,
here.
that's something you and I've talked about as we try to educate people about how to look at polls. Look for every time you start seeing the same number pop up over and over across the board on different issues or favorability, and that's been, you look at independence, it's like 70-23. So you sit that 60. What's holding the number up, that 63%? So 81% say the gas prices are straining their household budget. 63% blame Trump. Okay. So what's the difference there? Who are those like 19 points that are, that say the prices are straining their household budget, and you only get 63 who blame Trump? Well, it's not independents. I'll
Right.
guarantee you
Yeah.
that the
So that's
independents,
that's the MAGAs that are
yeah,
still going to sit with him.
yeah, that's when you have Republicans, like a group of Republicans who go, yeah, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he must have had a
Yep.
good reason. That's the people who are under strain in their household budget because of high gas prices. And still he must, yeah, yeah, I mean, he went after Iran, it must be a good reason, right? And buy the garbage about how we obliterated their nuclear stuff, but now we got to go back and dig and get it out or something because we want a nuclear, all the garbage that he pushes out there. They're still, yeah, that group is still buying. The important number is the 63, because that's Democrats and independents and probably some non-MAGA Republicans who are under strain, blame Trump, and are going to vote for real change. That's why it's not a blue wave. It is a wave of change. And it's all those people, that 63% is a massive wave coming. The rest of it is, even if you take it, it's 37. If you get rid of everybody who doesn't blame Trump for the increase, that's 37. And guess what? That's roughly, that's at the high end of his approval rating now. So, and all that is going to get worse. In other words, by the time we get to November, it's going to be, I think, more than 81% being strained. It may stay there because the other 19%, even $6 gas may not, bump the wealthy. But that 63% blame Trump number is going to go up. And I think the number of non-MAGA Republicans who call themselves non-MAGA Republicans is going to go up. The number of MAGA Republicans, the percent, is going to continue to go down. Their energy is going to continue to go down as this gets worse. That is the opportunity. We're going to win the House. I think we are going to win the Senate. I think the fight then becomes: what do Democrats put on offer that actually addresses these concerns immediately? That's the immediate thing that we need to start focusing on. I mean, win
Yep.
in November, but then what do we do? And it's got to be to address that strain. If we do that, some of these people will realign with us for the longer haul. And
Yep.
I think that's priority one. I'm all for all the other stuff.
Right,
The
but that kind of gets to what somebody for 2028 has to do to pick up the
yeah,
mantle. So that was good.
yeah.
I Before we get to a couple last questions, because we're already almost to time here, wanted to point out one last number. We every week you get another poll on double haters. This was specifically on a forced congressional choice in that same WAPO poll. Voters who don't trust either party on most issues prefer Democrats 49-32. So right now, if you were looking at how double haters will break, I know Joe, they were 2-1, even 3-1 last year. Right now, the poll has them 5-3. I think that's probably the floor. You're going to see that be more throughout the rest of the
Well,
year.
there's two ways that happens anyway. First thing you need to understand is double haters don't vote generally. We don't like either party. Okay. So if that's true, I can guarantee you that the 49-32, what is that of what's remaining? What is that, 70, 81, something like that? 81. Yeah, I'm doing my math. So 81%, that means 19 points of double haters when asked who do you prefer, Democrats or Republicans, still said, which means my guess is I could safely say that 18% is not going to vote in these midterms. Now, all you need to do is then say, what does that mean? The 49% becomes now 18 points are gone. And what does the 32% become? And that's what, when you saw in New Jersey, where real votes happened, the double haters who turned out broke 88-2. Now this looks a little better than that for if you're a Republican running incumbent, there you may be able to do a little bit better than two, maybe three, at worst four, but this is going to be 60-40 at least, not 65-35 among double haters. That's that break that I'm talking about. I think that this, by the way, these numbers, you're seeing them, but they'll get worse too, because the double haters, more economic strain, more chaos, et cetera, will I think grudgingly, they're already grudgingly siding more with Democrats. But what's going to happen is some of these people, like I said, that 18% that couldn't say which party they preferred, they're double haters. That's how they all should be. They all should be doing, like, it should be like 8% for Democrats, 7% for Republicans, and 83% saying I'm not voting. But it's 49. Half of double haters right now today are voting for Democrats, or say they will, and low 30s for Republicans. That means those percentages will go up just because of the 18 who don't vote. And also, I think some of that will shift. So, no, I think all this is, interestingly, I'm not sure that the party, it's going to be interesting to see how Republicans actually fight this, because it's becoming increasingly clear to me that they cannot win the vote. And I know we talk about, well, they can't win the vote, therefore they're going to do other things, to stop mail ballots, all that stuff. The real interesting thing is, do they continue to spend money on these loser races that they have, and put more of their efforts into those things? Because I think there's race after race for governor and Senate and House. Some of them are still close, but a lot of these, like in Iowa, Rob Sand is starting to open up a pretty big lead there. Do they really go in and pour more money after bad? So we'll see that happen. But I actually think I'm really interested to see, they've got more money than Democrats do, because of the billionaires fund throwing a lot of money at stuff. But I'm starting to look at these numbers and say, like, okay, what is $1 billion more of TV ads really going to do?
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. So, hey, we're just about out of time, but I can't let this go. We got a ton of emails with listeners' favorite movies. A lot of them very well reasoned. Two, I just want to call out. First of all, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jean. Maxine wrote in with a good one. And by the way, she listed Network, which I thought was a really, really good choice. That I think is my movie rec of the week. I think Joe, obviously, it kind of is like the old movie
Well, they
version
had
of
time to
Nexus
think
in a lot
about
of
it. They
ways.
had
Yeah,
actually time
yeah.
to think about it, unlike just, hey,
Well,
Chris,
and I do want to
name your
shout, yeah,
favorite movie.
I do want to shout out Steve from Shenzhen, China. We have a listener in China now, so we are truly international. I know we've had questions from all over Europe and Africa before. That might be our first from
And
China.
who did
So
he want?
thanks
Charlie
for
Wilson's
listening.
War? Is that
Charlie
him?
Wilson's War. I think he had W, Bulworth, the Contender, but all good. Again, I'm calling off the dogs. Thank you all for participating in this wonderful game. I do really appreciate getting the questions from all of you and then making Joe read them. So that's all the time we've got, brother. Yeah, it's your show. The last word on this is yours.
Uh, no, I actually enjoy being surprised. I've come to, or I've learned to enjoy it. So maybe you guys can come up with other things that put me on the hot spot. That wasn't one of my favorites, only because one of the things I tell you is when you do as many presidential campaigns as I have, um, and are involved in a lot of races like Doug Jones with Alex in 2017, knockdown dragouts in places like California against against Meg Whitman when Jerry won. Um, you don't have a lot of time. I watch movies that are like for the first time that are 16 years old because I missed them when I was in the middle of the Howard Dean campaign, or I missed that one. And so you give me time to think about it. I can come up with some, but that one was not in my wheelhouse at all because there's so many of them that I missed along the way, which is probably why I was kind of like flubbing around. But I appreciate it, and I'm sure Alex will think of better ways to put me on the hot spot. Thanks everyone for listening or watching that Trippi Show. Make sure you join us at sez.us. It's Civil Social Network for real people, not bots, not algorithms. And we've got to build our own media and social networks if we're going to fight what they are spending billions on creating more of and buying more of. We need to create our own. This podcast will always be free, and that's part of this. That's what Lincoln Square is about, creating uh, uh, episodes, podcasts, and places where you can get the facts and not get not have uh, the lies being spread at you. We try to expose them. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, you can please like and subscribe to get alerts when you post the next episode. You can always send us a question to that Trippi Show at gmail.com. Alex actually got to a few of them today. We'll try to get to some more. Or leave us a question or review on iTunes, and we'll see you next week. Thanks all.